Hey besties, Monica Ferguson here and welcome to World Domination. This is a safe space for absolute legends who are bold enough and brave enough to go within, to recreate their belief system, to aim high, to chase their wildest dreams and become everything that they are destined to be. This is a space for people who are serious about growth, about healing. We talk about all things mind, body, spirit, and we have the courage to go further than most people even dare to dream. Welcome, let's get into it. Hey besties, welcome to this week's episode. Monica Ferguson here, and this week I bring you my epic new Australian pal, Rachelle, love Raku, and she is a six-figure spiritual businesswoman, master coach, epic mum of five, pumped up on life, slightly unhinged powerhouse of the quantum activation healing. So basically, she's epic, mind, body, spirit, and this whole conversation went so quickly, and there will be many more episodes on this. Feminine energy, right? What is it? How do we access it? How do we utilize it? How does it impact our achievement of our success in all forms, right? Whether that's love, whether that's business, whether that's just our own happiness. Something that is so important for us to understand is that we are not just in this hustling, struggling, pushing, trying to make everything happen energy all the time. We've got to slow down, go within. Check out this episode, my friends, and let me know what your aha moments are. Hey, lady.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this. I just, you have a good feeling. You just know when something magical is about to happen. Yeah.
It's one of those moments, right? Everything's like tingling. It's ready to rock. I'm super excited to be here myself. So thank you. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. And this is, do you know what? I've actually thought about this topic. I talk about it all day, every day. Never ever made a podcast about it. So this was obviously for you. And I reckon we just dive in, because what I would love for you to explain to everyone first off is, what is feminine energy? And then what is dark feminine? That would be awesome.
Okay, I love this. And I just want to say to all of my the male listeners right now, don't turn off, right? Because we have masculine and feminine energies internally inside of ourselves. And it's going to give you, if you allow yourself to witness all of this, it's going to give you a lot more insight into every other human that you interact with, but especially your women. And so feminine energy is really, she's about intuition, she's flow, she's chaos, right? There's an energy of more and more and more with the feminine. She can be as big as she wants, and she can go in all of the places, and she's a huge energy, but she's also so fragile and vulnerable. And so she really needs that masculine energy to kind of hold the containment, which is why I'm inviting the men to stick around, right? And it's the more that she feels contained and safe, emotionally and physically safe, the more the feminine can be in her radiance. And I love that you ask about dark feminine, because when I talk about light and dark, light is like closer to ethereal, closer to celestial, closer to those higher realms, right? But it's also light in matter, and dark feminine's more about like being really here, and more in the earth planes and more in the physicality. So the feminine energy is really emotional. Like a feminine has a lot of emotion. So when we think about it, it's our body expressing all of those emotions. But the dark feminine, she's like wild, right? She's wild, she's chaos, but she's also passion and fire. Like if we're thinking of an element to add to the dark feminine, she is like earth, but fire. She's going to burn stuff down if she needs to. It's a powerful energy, right?
Yeah.
And it's also one that has been like tapped and suppressed the most in society.
Yeah. Yes, which is why I wanted to ask you about this, and specifically around the dark as well, because I hate the language around that, because it's actually not dark. It's like, but it sounds like it's a bad thing, but it's the exact opposite, right? Like I always get this vision of there's like a meme, and it's Beyonce like with a crown and like a staff, that like queen, that real powerful, like I have goosebumps. Like yes. I know my worth, I know my value, I know what I'm here to do. Yeah, I will. It's like, it's like Jesus flipping tables, like, like you stand up for what's right. Hey, you do it's this powerhouse energy. It's not like an evil thing. And that's the one thing I don't like about that word. the way that it's used. Yeah.
And that, which is why I like to make the reference, because light is more like the ethereal, it's more mind-based, it's more energetic, whereas dark feminine is more physicality. So when we're talking about like eroticism and all of those things, it's in the physical form that we're feeling those things. And so I want to be really clear, because dark is not as in the shadow, because there is a embodied and a shadow version of both of those energies. And so when we're talking about the dark, which is in terms of like not being good, because you can't see me doing parentheses with my fingers, is that we're talking about toxic. So toxic dark feminine is manipulative. Toxic dark feminine is emotional manipulation. It's sensual manipulation. We have that available to us. And the difference between embodied dark feminine and over the line into toxic is our values. It's being a stand for exactly what we're here to do. It's being a stand for our truth, our values, our morals, and that is how we like create the containment to be in the embodied. And exactly what you're talking about with Beyonce energy, because she embodies dark feminine so well, is that when we really know who we are and we know what we're here to do, and we know and we're lit up, because the feminine is radiance, right? She is like this beautiful, I want to say the word muse, but she's like this light. And so our masculine holds the container, but he also feeds off the light. And so it's this energy in her embodiment. She still gets what she wants. Like the toxic version manipulates to get what she wants. The feminine in her true power is going to orchestrate what she wants. So people are going to do what she wants out of their own free will, because they just want to see her in her light. They just want to be around that energy because it feeds them. There's a mutual thing. It feeds both of them, right? So it's a different space when we talk about like the toxic and the embodied.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for clarifying that. Honestly, I keep getting memes in my head now. My life is memes. Like, I'm a visual person, can you tell? But for my other visual friends, so just in case, sometimes diagrams are useful, right? So a friend of mine always just talked about the masculine and the feminine energy as like a river, and like the river bank is the masculine and the water and the flow is the feminine. And I have goosebumps again. It's going to be one of those podcasts. But I always come back to that, because it's like you need both. And I'd love for you to speak into this, the power of having both and learning how to harness both and use them together, especially because you are speaking to a bunch of heart-led, beautiful people who want to do amazing things in the world. And it's like, how do we balance these things?
Yes, and it's such a beautiful thing, because we need both, right? Like we need both. If we're doing big things in the world, we need to get out there and like do the big things. But if you're someone who's really striving to do something massive and has a huge vision on your heart, you need both. The feminine's the creativity. She's the one who's going to come out with all the ideas. She's the one who's going to express the desire, and then the masculine gets to work to make it happen. And so when you're talking about the riverbank example, if I'm too much masculine and my banks are so high that nothing can get to the river, like that isn't, it's going to be so constricted in its flow, it's not going to be able to create what it needs to create. So the river changes course over the time. The river goes to the places it needs to go, right? There's some beautiful power in that. And the more you kind of condense the walls in, if you were too much masculine, like there's not much room for anything in creativity, right? And if you didn't have any walls in your masculine, then the feminine's going to flow everywhere, and the river's going to become a lake rather than something that moves forward. So we need both. We need both. The feminine gets to express desire, create something really juicy to bring to life, and the masculine gets to get to work in making the action steps happen.
Yeah, I love that. Because my friend that gave me that little analogy, after we had this conversation, he was laughing because he said, I know you think you're really feminine, but you're actually quite masculine. I was like, what do you mean? He said, listen to the way that you speak about like mental processes. And I know you're an NLP master and stuff. I say like, so, but that's the masculine, isn't it? That's the direction, the focus, so that our feminine ideas, inspiration, all this juicy stuff actually it's being guided somewhere. It's not just a chaotic huddle on the lawn. Like, Lack of better words.
Which is so necessary to talk about, because the puddle on the lawn is like also sometimes that's really needed, right? For the feminine to just fully express and be okay with it. But 100%, like we need both.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to also think about, there's another like analogy to throw in here. Like our masculine is often the way that we're thinking, and our feminine's our body. So if you
Yeah.
think about like when you're having an emotional experience, like that there is energy there that is happening that you don't necessarily have thoughts to just yet, and then we add them in after. But
Yeah.
it's a beautiful way to think of it, because there's the feminine in her energy is like more, whereas the masculine is more, is it contains that energy, and then it also like has focus, so it's like directional. Whereas the feminine can flow if she's allowed to, and there's no containment, she will flow in every single direction at once. Like we can, that energy can get like super unruly, right? Like, and so it's really important. It's really important to have the containment and the safety that comes with having an embodied masculine in there as well.
Yeah. And I suppose what would be really cool to chat about is how this works in like sacred partnership, like in a relationship. But then also obviously business is very different because most of us are, solopreneurs or whatever. So that in ourselves, and obviously we show up differently than when we show up with our partner. I'd love for you to speak into this.
Yes. And there's so much, right? Because it's a beautiful thing you're talking into, because we have totally different relational things with everything. Like, so and especially when it comes to intimate relationship, because we are going to see where intimate relationship is the most beautiful space for you to learn deeply about yourself, because it's a mirror. It's going to be a mirror. And it's so interesting. In my group that I'm running at the moment, there was so much around the father wound that actually was from their mums. So we were doing this piece around father wound, but actually a lot of that wounding came from their mum, because in the relationship, the father, for whatever reason, was absent, whether they were emotionally absent, whether they were physically not able to be there at work, whether they were there but like just checked out, right? Or whether there was like big trauma things that happened with their father. And so their mum had to overcompensate. So what happens in any relationship is when there's two lots of that energy in the person and in the relationship. And if one person isn't holding their pole of that of that energy, the other person will overcompensate. And usually that means going over into the toxic version, which is why they had the wounding in the father wound from their mums, because their dads weren't around, and so that she had to take up that extra masculine. And it's a huge part when it comes to single parenting, especially as women, because we overcompensate because the man's not there. And so then there's that dynamic that happens. And fellas, if you are noticing that your partner is going over, and one of the best ways to spot this is if there's controlling behavior. And it might not look like you have to do this, but it will look like, hey, can you do this for me? Like it has to be this specific way or it's not going to work. If that's showing up in your relationship, then and it may be from the man or it may be from the woman, because these are energies, right? That it means that they don't feel safe enough in the containment, in the masculine containment. So they don't feel like you can get the work done, or they don't feel like they're emotionally safe enough to express themselves. And because of that, they go into the control, because if I control my environment, it's going to feel safer for me. But that's also the feminine taking up that masculine pole.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is honestly one of my favorite things to talk about, because you see it so clearly though, but it ruins relationships, because you've got these women who should be operating in a much more feminine energy, where they're able to receive more, they're able to be in their present and their feelings, and they're hustling and they're doing all the things, and they're burnt out and they're resentful and they're naggy. And then you've got this guy who's super passive and not in his masculine. So he doesn't feel good because he's not taking a lot of action. His testosterone isn't flying. So they all feel like crap and no one changes it. It's like,
yes.
it's so interesting how like the feminine thing I've played with for years. Like I've read a lot of books about this stuff because I had to heal myself. I was in the most wounded masculine energy for almost my entire life, out of survival, safety. It was not safe to not be. So I had these massive walls up. No one could get in. Like not I kept everyone at a distance. I did everything on my own. I was constantly hustling to earn my worth and my value, trying to prove myself, trying to be enough. And it's like, man, oh, I have goosebumps again. But, like this layer by layer thing of like, okay, what is this fear? What is this feeling? What is this belief that's coming up? Why am I doing this? Oh, because I feel unworthy. Oh, because I'm terrified of men because of the stuff that happened. Oh, because I'm actually terrified of everyone because of all these things that happen. Oh, because I have all these beliefs. And it was like so hard though to unpeel this. And especially around men, I was like, when I became aware of it, I was like, oh shit, like like oh this one's gonna hurt. But I was like, I would just go into fight or flight. When I first met someone that was actually worthy of like consciously pulling these walls down, I remember the first weekend that he stayed here, I went outside to meditate, to ground myself. I was sweating. Literally, I was watching my hands shake and I was in fight or flight for no reason. You know why this man had just like gone and bought some coconut and like sugar-free chocolate and made me this little dessert thing. And I'm sitting outside almost like having a panic attack because you know why? There's a man in my house. And it sounds so crazy, but it's like, man, I've seen men almost kill women. Like that was terrifying. I let a man, and he's not going away. And I remember realizing he's not going away. Like all these other men, they'd come in, all these other men, it's not like that, but the other men, it was very like, I would attract very wounded people because I was wounded. So they'd come in and then quickly run away and then I'd feel relief. Yes. And then I'd feel abandonment. But at first I'd be like, oh, cool. But this one, he wouldn't go away. And so oh my God. And we just.
So amazing, right?
We just don't talk about this stuff though,
We need to talk about
algebra instead. What the heck?
What the hell? Oh, the recorder. I don't know how many times I've been able to whip out my recorder, play a little diddly and do some algebra and like my problem. But you were touching on something. So like, this is something I get so freaking passionate about because, when there has been all of that wounding, you've done all that work on yourself and I'm imagining your listeners are these types of people, right? Or they wouldn't be listening. So it's like, they've done all their work on themselves and they're healing. Nobody talks enough about how freaking confronting it is when you start to invite in an embodied version of the opposite of you. So if you're in your feminine pole and you've done all the work and you're like, yes, I'm going to be open to receive. And then you decide to get into a relationship because you can do it on your own because it's easy because you don't have a reflection. But when that next person comes in, you're going to be confronted with all the relational stuff, right? The relational wounds. But if you're in your embodied feminine energy and they're in their embodied masculine energy, the energy between those two poles is so strong. It's confronting, it's going to be healing, but for your nervous system who is used to having that wounding, it's going to bring up all of the stuff that gets to be healed. And when you're with a beautiful man who can hold you in that space and hold everything that's there, all of the healing will be done, but you're going to meet up with all of the parts of your nervous system that are freaking out about being with the masculine because the difference between the toxic and the embodied masculine is still the same energy. It's still the same masculine energy. And the difference between toxic and embodied is just him being totally in his values, totally in his morals. He knows where he is. He knows where he stands. And he is potent, right? So the more you contain something and he's containing his own energy, if he's in his embodied, then the more you contain something, think about the energy being everywhere and he's put his borders in, right? So he's containing, he's putting the river banks in. And so his energy becomes so potent in that. And so it's really scary. It's a higher vibration than what it is being with somebody who's in their toxic, because the toxic's literally just leaky energy, right? It's just a way that that leaks out. And if he's healed all those, he's slapped, and like we're all working on it still, right? But if he's healed all those cracks, he's going to be so much more potent. And so that is going to be really confronting that higher vibration for our nervous system, which is exactly what you were talking about when I'm like, when you're like, man, I'm having a full traumatic response. Fight, freeze. I'm running outside. I'm doing some exercise. I'm like,
hugging trees.
What is going on? Yes.
But I mean, oh my gosh, like I think being people in business, right, you become very aware of this stuff as well, because, getting the balance right between output versus receiving, and you quickly learn if there's an imbalance. And I had a massive imbalance. I was 100% output, couldn't receive because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough. So that was something I had to work on. But I think, relationships are just so triggering. Like I remember he said to me, he's like, holy shit. He's like, you're like my mirror. I'm like, I literally am. And same to you. Like And it's so confronting. And this is why I love, though, these conversations about the subconscious mind, because it's not that, yeah, it's not that actually anything's gone wrong or that we're bad people, but it's like all of us are probably carrying some amount of trauma and stuff. And it's like we don't know it's there until someone awesome shows up and actually triggers it. Like,
Illuminates it for us. And if it's not like, if it's not your
yeah,
partner, your children very much will, or it'll be in a colleague relationship, or I like to think our souls, our bodies just constantly want us to win. And so we put things in the way for us to actually grow through later on. And I also think when we come into this human experience, we have our souls that have been here before, so we have past life, but we also have our DNA. Like we know that our DNA pass on holographic memories. If you take a organ out of somebody and you transplant it into somebody else, there's many documented cases that that new person will have memories of the old person. So
yeah,
we know factually, like science-based, that that happens. So our DNA's brought stuff through. So it's huge. Like think about, especially with the feminine energy, think about that from a perspective. Up until 1950s, we couldn't even open our own bank account without having our husband do it, right? So
mm,
societally and conditionally, we have a lot of suppression on the feminine energy. So it's really normal that we have a lot of stuff that's here that gets to be worked through. And it's beautiful in what you were talking about. And that shows up everywhere, right? In business and at home
yeah,
and with your relationship, with your person at the canteen, like all of the different places that you
yeah,
are, it's going to show up. And our soul, our bodies, they want us to win. They want us to do it. So they're going to show you the things. They're going to bring them up beautifully on a platter for you to
yeah.
see, so you can work through it if you choose to.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's how we respond when that happens. And a lot of people get triggered and go, well, you do this, you make me feel like this. No, they're your mirror. But that's what so often happens. And I see this all the time, that dynamic of just, it's like they're not working as a team. It's like what they don't understand. They're not taking responsibility for their own triggers and their own stuff. But it's like I have such a thing about empowering women to operate in a feminine, like divine feminine energy, because I think that firstly, I mean, this is what's happening on the planet, right? Everyone is like starting to wake up to slowing down, being present, learning how to receive, like all these things we're starting to talk about, law of attraction and all sorts of stuff like this, instead of this hustle that burns everyone out, and that, you know, this lifestyle where everyone's resentful, running on a freaking treadmill for what, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but it's so interesting because I honestly believe, and not to be negative, but I feel like learning how to operate in a feminine energy has been one of the most challenging things I've ever done, just because of who I had to become in that process. Like the trauma, the pain, the amount of stuff that I had to confront in order to be safe in my body in the present moment. Like I'd learned to operate in my head, right, which is a very masculine energy, as a way of bypassing how I truly felt. So as long as I was constantly busy and distracted, I never ever had to feel my real pain. And I see this everywhere, and we're just not taught this stuff. Hey,
Yeah.
it's such a good
And
mask, being
right.
busy.
Being busy. And it's like it is literally the most socially acceptable way to numb out is
Yeah,
work, right?
yeah,
And how often do you see that when you're like, okay, like this is too much. Let me go do some work so I can distract myself from it. Like, yeah, we have like social media to distract ourselves this day and age, but it's the most socially acceptable. Like it's the
yeah,
most socially acceptable. And the reason why resting feels like like is so challenging for everybody is because it feels like us. For a moment, you have to actually face off with all of the stuff that you have been running from, right? Like that you have been overworking and like trying to avoid. And yes, it is hard. Yes, it's confronting to look at all those things, but holy heck, like the level of freedom it gives to your life to actually like look at those things and confront them. It's they're going to keep smacking you in the face, and it will just get louder and louder and louder and louder until you actually take a moment to be with it. And so it's our soul, like there are lessons to be learned, and our soul will keep giving us more and more bigger scenarios until we actually go, okay, Okay. There's a mentor of mine that his name's Preston Smiles, and he always talks about, are you going to listen to the whisper? Are you going to listen to the tap, or are you going to listen to the 4x4? Like when life grabs the 4x4 and like beats you down, so you have to listen, right? And
Yeah.
so this is the thing, when you make the time for spaciousness, all of that stuff is going to come up. And it's also how you get into the receiving mode of which we really need if we're wanting to grow a big business. You want to receive money, like you want to receive clients. Like there is need for you to have a beautiful moment with your energy to allow space for things to come in and magic to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you recommend for getting into the receiving mode? How do you support people to do that?
I love that question. It's really slowing down, right? It's and the thing is, when we're not used to doing it, it's really challenging. When we've had a lot of trauma in our lives, it's really challenging.
Mm.
And this is the beautiful thing about the masculine and feminine energy, because the biggest thing I recommend to you as you start to try, find ways that feel good for you, because what works for everybody won't work for everybody. Do you know what? One person doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so it's finding ways to start to ease into it. But the biggest, so it could be meditation, it could be spending time floating in water, it could be just having a moment of lying with yourself. Personally, for women, I think it's really great to get into a great relationship with your body. And so ways to help kind of slow things down is actually dancing, like to slow music, like having movement exercises, having a moment in the shower every day where you just actually like love and cherish like your body. Have a moment
Mm.
where you rub your skin and like be here with your body. It's really important because we're so used to running, and we get to stop and actually listen to what our body's desiring, what our body wants. And it's a big, big thing. And you can take it a little step at a time, because the biggest part of this whole adventure is to making sure our masculine's holding us. So instead of when you slow down, right, and you start and you go, okay, I'm going to do a meditation, but your mind goes 100 miles an hour, you can't do it, and you're like, oh, instead of this is the biggest piece. Instead of going, oh, I can't do it, I'm a terrible person, I'm really bad at this, look, I can't be feminine. It's holding yourself. It's going, oh wow, I'm not really good at that yet. Let me try it again. Let me try a different way. It's like holding yourself in the magnificence and love that you deserve, because that's how you heal your feminine. That's how you heal your masculine, is actually being like a beautiful, loving holder of who you are and all of the trauma and all of the things that are here for you in your life.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. We're going to have you come back a million times. Like I knew that was going to happen. That's basically the end of the episode. Just ridiculous how fast that goes. But guys, send me your questions, because this is a topic that we're going to explore much more deeply. There's so much that we could say, but wow, that was amazing.
Thank you for having me. So good to be here.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for being here, and please let me know your aha moments. I want to hear all about them. For extra support, make sure you're following me on TikTok and Instagram at the Monica Ferguson. Check out the School of Greatness for self-study courses. And of course, if you want one-on-one mentoring, just DM me and I would love to have a chat with you. Go and slay the day. Thank you for being you. See you soon.